everyone, it's Charlene. Today I'm going to be making a shaker card using this beautiful floral hot foil plate, as well as the Mom's Day stamp set and the grass frames die set. Really fun. And I'm going to show you some tips and tricks along the way for fussy cutting and a couple of other things. So first I'm going to go ahead and heat up my hot foil plate, and then I'm putting down a piece of gold foil, followed by my cardstock, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit the timer. Now I have sped this up a bit so you don't have to wait for it to heat up. I'm just going to go ahead and add on the shim and plate and run this through. Now I am using the Glimmer hot foil machine, but there are other hot foil machines that this hot foil plate will work with as well. But this is a really pretty hot foil plate, and I'm actually going to use this as the background for my shaker, which is kind of fun. So once that's done, I'm going to pull it out and peel off the foil cover sheet, and you can see underneath there, isn't that gorgeous? It just looks so pretty. All right, so this is a tip for you. If you're going to be fussy cutting, a good place to start is you can outline your stamp with pencil. And what that's going to do is it's going to create an outline area for you to cut with your scissors and makes it really easy. And then you can just pick your stamps up and go ahead and stamp right in those spots. And once you're done, you'll have those lines there to use your scissors for when you're fussy cutting. So I like to do that. It's really helpful. And I'm going to go ahead and color this cute little watering can. You can see I did stamp the sentiment Happy Mother's Day, but I do ultimately go ahead and heat emboss that on acetate instead. But you can see I've colored my stamped image with Copic markers, and then I'm coming back in and I am re-stamping. So I did not move my stamps, and I'm going to go ahead and use some clear embossing powder over my ink, and that's just going to really make that black ink pop. You could also use some clear embossing ink and then use some black embossing powder if you really wanted to give it some extra dimension. It looks really fantastic, but the clear embossing powder also gives it this nice shine, and it just looks really pretty. So I like them both. I find clear embossing powders a little bit easier to work with than black embossing powder, because for some reason the clear embossing powder doesn't seem to stick to your paper nearly as much. So just keep that in mind. If you struggle with heat embossing, then you might want to just try it with clear embossing powder to start with until you get comfortable with heat embossing. So I'm heating that up with my heat gun, just running along as it melts. I generally do let my heat gun warm up a little bit before I put it to the paper. I find that helps as well. So you can see I'm just going to go ahead and cut along those lines I created when I drew around the stamp with my pencil. And if you decide you want to cut it a little bit closer to the stamp, which ultimately I do, and I do that off camera, then you at least have a good sense already of where you want to cut, and you can trim a little bit here and there after you're done. So I've cut out off camera the grass frame border die, and there's lots of other fun little things that come along with this die set as well. There's a smaller grass frame as well as some flowers and things like that, so you can make some really pretty things. But I decided to do the grass border, and I'm coming in with some Distress Oxide ink, and I'm going to be doing a little bit of splashing on it as well. So I started out with some Twisted Citron, and now I'm coming in with some Mowed Lawn, and I'm just wanting to give it kind of a varied grass look. I find you don't want to make things like this look too uniform, because then it doesn't look quite as realistic. I guess it just depends on what you're going for. I kind of like for mine to have different colors in there, especially because I'm going to be doing some additional distressing to the border. So once I get it how I like it, I decided that I wanted to come in with also some peeled paint just to tone down the brightness of the green. So keep that in mind. The nice thing about Distress Oxides is they will blend really easily, and they also, because they are opaque, will layer and will cover up the prior color. So if you're trying to tone something down, you can come in with a different color and kind of tone down the brightness of the Distress Oxide that you used. Now I'm coming in with a water spritz, and I'm just doing that to have the water reaction to the oxide. It kind of gives you some little white spots, and it looks really nice, and you can sort of see the varying inks that are underneath there. And then I have sprayed a little bit of water onto my silicone mat, and I'm using some perfect pearls. I'm using the gold, and you could use a little spoon or something like that if you're wanting to make sure you don't make a big mess. I was lucky I didn't knock it all over, which I totally could have because I am accident prone. But now I'm just going to go ahead and use my fan brush to splash some of that gold on there and get some gold splatters. So I decided to go ahead and grab a piece of just copy paper because I was getting gold perfect pearls all over my table because I wasn't using my splat box, which I totally should have here, but I just wasn't thinking because I was talking to one of my kiddos at the time. But coming in here with that gold, I think it just adds some really beautiful texture to the piece and makes it kind of, just warm. The gold adds a lot of warmth to your card. So now I'm coming in with that Happy Mother's Day stamp again, and I'm going to stamp it here in some clear embossing ink on some acetate that is heat embossable. Now, not all acetate is heat embossable, so just make sure if you're going to do this that your acetate is rated for heat embossing. Otherwise, it will just melt everywhere. So a couple of tips here. The embossing powder loves to stick to acetate. I always make sure to wipe as much away as I can, and then also you can use a dryer sheet like I'm doing here and go around and wipe on your acetate, and that will help with the static that's in the air that's causing the embossing powder to stick to your acetate. So once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and use my heat gun to warm it up. And you definitely want to make sure your heat gun is warmed up before you do this, as well as you can kind of come in, take your gun off for a little bit, and then put it back again, just so you don't melt your acetate. And now I'm coming in with some double-sided tape, and I'm going around on my grass border here. I'm using, I believe it's 1/8 of an inch double-sided tape. And I'm just going to go all the way around. You also could use liquid adhesive, and I'm going to go all the way around so that I can adhere it to the piece of acetate. So once I get all of that down, I'm just going to come in. I have a weeding tool there. I find I use this tool all the time. It's super helpful to get release paper off of the double-sided tape and just different things like that. So now you could lay it down on top of your acetate, or I changed my mind here and decided to put the acetate on top of it just so I could try and make sure there was less hanging over on the sides. But I did ultimately end up trimming a little bit off anyway, and you can see I just came in with my scissors and trimmed off any excess acetate that was hanging around. So once I have that done, I can come in with my foam, my double-sided foam strips, and go all the way around the edge. You could use foam tape for this as well. I just happen to have these strips, and I find that they are really handy when you are doing a shaker frame style card like this. They also are really handy for going around like circles and things like that. So I like to have different kinds of foam tape and foam strips and things like that in my stash because I find them to be useful for different kinds of projects. So you're going to want to make sure that your foam pieces do butt up against each other because you don't want to have any little spaces where your confetti mix can escape from your shaker card. Ask me how I know. I've had that happen before where I wasn't paying close enough attention. But just make sure it is nice and butted up against each other, and then you can use your scissors to trim out any extra little pieces that are hanging over or anything like that. So I went ahead and I took off all the release paper. This is just personal preference. You might want to wait and put your shaker mix in first. I like to go ahead and take mine off beforehand because I find that if I try and peel it off after my mix is in there, sometimes my card kind of moves around too much and causes the mix to go flying everywhere. So, but I do it both ways. I just think if you are accident prone like me, it's a little bit easier to take the release tape off first. Now I'm just using some liquid adhesive around the edges, and you can see I have my beautiful foiled paper there, and I haven't cut it down or anything like that because I am going to just go ahead and adhere my shaker piece to that and then just trim around the edges. That way I can just make sure I get a nice clean trim all the way around the edges, and then I can apply the whole thing to a card base. So once I get that all trimmed off, you can see I'm going to come in with my liquid adhesive again, and I'm going to adhere it to my card base. Now this is an A2 sized foil frame. You could certainly use it on any size card, but it is an A2 size frame foil plate, so it fits perfectly on an A2 size card, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And so I have that for my card base, and it's a top folding card base that I've made. And now I'm going to go ahead and glue my element of the watering can, which is so cute. I know that my mom loves flowers, so I think this is really cute with the watering can. And I'm not sure if I'm going to send her this card or another card that I've made, but I think she would appreciate either one because they both have flowers. All right, guys, here's my finished card. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I do hope you find some time to get crafty today. Please be sure to like and subscribe, as well as hit that notification bell. That way I can keep bringing you crafty content in the future. Until next time, happy crafting.